we went to Syria, it was a change. We came from Jordan. Jordan is really a desert. So when we got there, it was beautiful. My aunt used to call it the country with happy skies. And it was happy. There were trees and rivers and water, the smell of jasmine and the smell of tuberose. Beautiful. And the fruits, the smell of the fruits and the taste. Everything there was beautiful. It was the best time we spent there. The cafes and the walk in the streets. It was a great place. And then this has to happen. And they replaced all these happy memories with the happy skies became gloomy and dark, filled with black smoke. The smell of roses, I'm sure it's been replaced with the smell of blood and death. Just the feeling that all these innocent people, all these beautiful people that I knew when I was a little girl, and the faces, the happy faces, are now maybe dead, maybe being tortured, maybe in prison. I don't know what happened to all these people that I used to know.
I knew when I'm going there, I'm taking risk. And there's a chance not to come back and see my family. The second day when the shelling was stopped maybe for a few hours, how you can differentiate between soldier and civilian when you throw 500-pound bomb, you're taking the whole neighborhood. I mean, we saw buildings, 7-floor buildings, on the ground. Just like nothing there. It's just like you look at, it's not even in your imagination. It's not even, I watch horror movies. I didn't see much this kind of picture. I saw war movies, but not like this.
I was interested in what happens if you put good people in an evil place. Does the situation outside of you come to control your behavior, or does the things inside of you, your attitudes, your values, your morality, allow you to rise above a negative environment?
Police car pulls up in front, and a cop comes to the front door, knocks, and says he's looking for me. So they, right there, they took me out the door. They put my hands against the car. It was a real cop car. It was a real policeman, and there were real neighbors in the street who didn't know that I was. This was a experiment.
There was just a random pickup from the street by Assad's armed forces. I didn't know where that prison was because I was blindfolded the whole time.
This is where it all happened in the summer of 1971. Right down this corridor in the basement of the psychology department is where we converted these offices and storage rooms to prison cells. And we had students like yourself, college students from all over the country, play the roles of either prisoners or guards. This was the yard, the prison yard. Here in this closet was solitary confinement, the infamous hole where the guards put prisoners for punishment.
There were a lot of people, like almost 200 bodies in such a small place. So small that most of the days we had to sleep standing up.
And you can see over on the wall, one of the prisoners etched the days of the week to mark the passage of time, starting on Sunday, Monday, through the rest of the week.
How long did this study last?
Well, we were going to run it for 2 weeks, but we had to end it after only 6 days.
Why was that?
There were a few guards who hated to see the prisoners suffer. They never did anything which would be demeaning of the prisoners. The interesting thing is none of the good guards ever intervened in the behavior of the guards who gradually became more and more sadistic over time.
Tortured in many ways. Wires, clubs, electrical sticks, kicking, punching, cigarettes being lit off on my own body.
I had really thought that I was incapable of this kind of behavior. I was surprised, no, I was dismayed to find out that I could really be that I could act in a manner so absolutely unaccustomed to anything I would even really dream of doing. And while I was doing it. I didn't feel any regret. I didn't feel any guilt. It was only afterwards when I began to reflect on what I had done that this behavior began to dawn on me, and I realized that this was a part of me that I hadn't really noticed before.
We like to think there is this core of human nature that good people can't do bad things and that good people will dominate over bad situations. In fact, one way to look at the Stanford Prison Study is that we put good people in an evil place and we saw who won. Well, the sad message is, in this case, the evil place won over the good people.
I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. I was lucky to bring one of my oldest here, but I still have 2 kids that are under siege. I can't get them out, and nobody would help. Nobody, and there is no way for me to get them out. And they're bombing the city every day. Every day. The second time they came, they asked for me. They couldn't find me in the house. So out of their anger, they were at my house 3:30 in the morning, and my kids were sleeping in bed. One of them is a daughter, 6 years old. They just grabbed her and threw her out of the bed on the floor, just out of the anger because they couldn't get me, and she was in a coma. She's only 6 years old, but still, I'm not losing faith in humanity. We are humans. Nobody's born violent. Nobody. I'm standing on my feet, and I'm saying this.
The guerrillas usually came to the houses in the rural areas and asked for food. If that information got into the militaries, so they will kill you because they will think you are sympathized with the guerrillas. It didn't matter if you helped the guerrillas, anyway, you were trapped in between the 2 sides because the guerrillas anyway were gonna take away your kid. You will never again see your kids because that's what happened to many families. I don't believe people are born violent. I think we learned that because we didn't have any choice. We lived that violence and from both sides, militaries and guerrillas. So all these kids that grew up in that environment, they learned that there is a way of living in that violent world. The gangs started forming. You have to pay. If you don't pay, they will kill you. So there is no peace.
This is a photograph from World War II. This is a German soldier who's about to execute a mother who's holding her child against her. There are several things to note about this photograph here. First of all, the fact that he's about to do this in front of a cameraman suggests he's got a diminished emotional reactivity to this situation. He's not distressed by the situation. There's also a notion of compartmentalization going on here because this photograph he actually mailed back to his family. So he's got a family, he cares about his wife and child, and he sends them a picture of executing somebody else's family. So there's this notion where he can take these ideas that are very different and compartmentalize them. The neurosurgeon Yitzhak Fried in the late 90s started thinking about this a lot, and he said, you know, when you look across all these different events in the world, you find this kind of behavior everywhere, where people just, it's like they lose their normal brain function and become somebody different. They act very differently. So he named this Syndrome E, and he said there are very particular signs and symptoms that you would look for, just like you would look for coughing and fever with pneumonia. You look for particular things that characterize people behaving like this. So there's ability to do these repetitive acts of violence people maybe start off having a little bit of a hard time with it and very rapidly desensitize. It doesn't bother them anymore. There's this hyper-arousal, or as the Germans call it, Rausch, where it's this feeling of elation in doing these acts. Group contagion, which is a very important one, which, everybody's doing it and it catches on and it spreads. And the interesting thing from a neuroscience point of view is that things like language and memory and problem solving, those are working just fine. Those are completely intact. The case of syndrome E is something like this. The emotional areas are short-circuited.
Every generation has its built-in assumptions that the world is flat, or that the world is round, things we take for granted that may or may not be true. Of course, in the vast majority of cases, historically, these things aren't true, but we're locked into these precepts without even knowing it oftentimes.
Why do we keep recreating the same reality? Isn't it amazing that we have options and potentials that exist, but we're unaware of them? Is it possible that we're so conditioned to our daily lives, so conditioned to the way we create our lives, that we buy the idea that we have no control at all?